Thanks for getting us connected today, Dakota. I want to start, I have a couple topics to talk about, but I want to start by just checking in with all of you guys to see, how did round two go? Did you run any snags? What worked for you? And I'm going to Rick Boyle, just because you're top right of my screen. I'm going to start with you.
And unfortunately, from what I've been told, we have a slow collection today, so please bear with me here. But our round two went really well. Our group's quickly settling into a comfort level and developing our own kind of routines for how we navigate through the agenda. And I'm very happy with the chemistry our group is developing.
Good. When you say went really well, can you give me an example? Like what makes you say it went well?
Everybody came prepared, everybody was on time, and everybody participated. We, at the end of our first meeting, kind of predetermined what our spotlight topic was going to be, and everybody had a chance to think through it. Everybody brought some information to the shared from their organizations how they deal with the onboarding process that one of our members was challenged with. And it was a very interactive conversation, which I enjoyed.
When you say you planned in advance for the spotlight, did you all agree that you were doing spotlights on the same topic?
The way we did the spotlight was we allowed one person in the group to kind of identify a challenge that they were facing. And I guess that's what I'm calling the spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
So prior to that, volunteered, said there was a kind of top of mind problem that he was going through, and the group agreed that we would all work together that before we moved on to the next.
Awesome. I got that. So somebody had the onboarding issue that they wanted to spotlight, and you planned the month before to actually tackle that in the coming month.
Give everybody a chance just to kind of rattle it around in their head, think about how they could offer some solutions. Then when we were in the meeting and he dug a little deeper into exactly how that pertained to his business, it wasn't the first time we were hearing it. It made the conversation, it accelerated the interactions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I can see that. I love the idea of prep, and that's actually one of the things on my list today, to think about just communication between meetings so that people are more prepared as they arrive. That's a whole month of preparation. I don't know. I guess I'm a little impatient. I wouldn't want to say, let's fix this and I'll be back in a month and we'll talk about it. I'd be like, let's fix it tomorrow. But if that worked, I love the preparation, and I love that you had a good experience because of the preparation, because I think that's a key component that we have to think about. How do we get people to show up ready to go? And I'm really happy to hear people showed up prepared and on time. That's great. That's great. Andrew, I'm gonna.
And we decided in a group that if.
Oh, go ahead, Rick.
I was just saying, we decided as a group to try this approach. And if something came up in that 3 to 4 weeks before we met again that was more pressing for an individual member, we could always pivot or shelf it, but at least it gave us a topic going into it in the event that there was nothing else that was more urgent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting idea. I like it. Andrew, I'm gonna jump to you. How did your week, month two go?
It went well. It went a lot more efficiently than the first month, naturally, because you're getting into your rhythms and things are flowing a little better. Sorry, I have my big screen up here and my laptop's down here. So it was very good. I was extremely transparent on the Google review that we sent back. I'm sure that I know that somebody got that because I've heard a response about it already. I do have a struggle on, the guys that are sitting there and frankly are paying a lot of money to sit there. I don't know if the excitement is there with the format that we're doing it. We also kind of broke off and kind of went our own path on one thing at the end of the meeting, which Tommy's not here, but that Tommy brought up, and that was to start having one-on-ones with guys. So everyone in the group was assigned to go and have a one-on-one, like kind of meet and greet with with somebody else of the group. So that's kind of nice because that has brought up a whole lot of dialogue with the individual that I have. Well, we haven't met, but we talk almost daily now on the phone. So it's good to learn that, and I'm excited to learn more from the other guys in the group as we, everyone switches partners through. I think that was very good. Frankly, I'm just underwater at work, so I haven't done your video yet and sent to the group. I've got this weekend to get that done, but I think it's good. Everyone's expecting what there is and to move forward. I like Rick's idea of just bringing up and kind of mentally siloing and preparing for what the next discussion point is. People are coming in a little more prepared, as opposed to, shooting from your hip and running with it. I'm efficient at both ways, so I can go about either way. So I think that is a good idea. Maybe it's worthwhile trying it this coming Tuesday to see. Also, I have one small request. Can we send out like a calendar invite for this specific meeting that has the link, so I don't have to go back and search my emails for 3 months ago or 2 months ago when the link was initially sent?
Yeah, let me check with that. I thought I have one that has everyone on it. Let me see if let me make sure
it doesn't have me on
it. Let me see. There's 14 people on it. You're on here.
Yeah, I'll check the spelling because I don't have it. So I just have to go back to Jerry's email from 2 months ago to pick up that link.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Did the rest of you have the link? Or the calendar invite? The rest of you have it? Okay.
Maybe I'll take it as a sign.
No, there's a few people on there that have a question mark next to their name. So I assume that one meant that you didn't accept it, but I'm used to that. Lots of people never actually accept a meeting, but still show up. It kind of throws me a little bit, but.
Right. You couldn't go Friday without seeing my face, right?
That's right. That's exactly right. All right, good. Chase.
Hi. Good to see everybody.
Good to see you.
Listener, first time caller. Love you guys. Love your show. Dakota and I felt like, well, I don't want to speak for Dakota, but I felt like we hit it with a lot of energy. I was waiting at the door and giving everybody hugs when they came in, and just had a lot of good energy throughout. We trusted the process, and it went well. Got deeper into some of the stuff, which was good. So yeah, it was easier to go deeper now that we had, this is our sophomore attempt at this. And been working with our accountability partners. I've been reaching out to mine, and it's created kind of a neat relationship with someone who I would never normally talk to. So just grateful to be here. I want to thank God and all you guys for just, being you.
Dakota, I almost called you Jerry because I looked up and saw the name on the screen. Sorry about that. You're allowed to eat meat and drink bourbon if you want. Do you want to?
What do you think's in here?
Do you want to add on to what Chase said? I've forgotten that the two of you are in the same group.
No, or sorry, I will add one thing, which is we did do accountability partners, and I had the person that I was with, I did have to chase down a little bit. So I had to hound them just a couple times to get to just how's it going with your task or whatever. But when we ended up having a phone call, it ended up being really good. So it wasn't bad. It was just like when you get a text message and you ignore it and whatever. So but I think when we had the phone call and talked through how he did on the thing, it was good. So that's my only addition.
Excellent. Rick Meyer, save the best for last. I think John's driving. I do want to hear from you, John, though, if you're able to chime in here in a minute when Rick's done.
All right. I felt like it went well. I do feel like second round, people's expectations or knowing of what was happening was helpful just to kind of keep the flow going. We pretty much stuck to your agenda, except that we only do one spotlight. And we elongated the kind of the conversations around last monthly speaker series. And so just try to give people some room to chat through that. So I felt like we had enough margin to kind of, the beginning I think is pretty regimented and good, and just kind of working through those things. And then the spotlight, working on that. And I think that was really helpful. And, and the extra time was, I think, useful because people had a lot of opinions and ideas. And then I feel like I tried to kind of formalize and visually represent kind of all that stuff. And I think it was super helpful for the guy in the hot seat. So, I think that it went well. I feel like people are pretty excited to be a part of the group. I sent out a reminder, and one guy's like, "Hey, I'm going to be out of town. Can I call in?" And so my hope is that our buy-in will continue to be high. So I haven't checked in Dakota with my partner yet, so I appreciate that reminder. I'll do that right now. And so, I think it was good.
So were you, Rick, I want to make sure I was trying to jot notes while you're talking. You said did you use the topic from the speaker series as the spotlight topic? Is that what you were saying?
No, I was just saying we did one instead of 2 spotlight sessions, we did one.
Okay. You were saying you dug into the speaker series topic deeper.
And then we allowed some additional time for the speaker series topic.
Gotcha.
So between those two, it filled our time pretty well. And we were able to kind of like wind down, then, okay, it's 9:30, it's time to get out of here. So I felt like it wasn't rushed and we had enough time to do stuff. So I think that I feel like we might be in a good rhythm. We'll see how this third one plays out, but I think that's a good rhythm for us in our group.
Yeah, I like that you're finding a way to have it not feel rushed, not feel compressed, because the agenda in general feels a bit compressed to me. Most agendas do, but my feedback on one spotlight is this: I'm not dogmatic about the number of spotlights, as long as the group is feeling like they're getting to be in the spotlight often enough. Like if you've got a group of 10 people, my group's relatively small. We have like 6 people. So it's somewhat small, but I know some of you are managing about 10 different people. And if one person's in the spotlight each month, then they're probably only getting a crack at it once a year, and that's a long time to go. So that's something I would say, let's just keep an eye on and see how that works. I know personally, I get a lot out of it when someone else is on the hot seat, and I'm involved in talking with them. I'm still learning, I'm still getting something out of the conversation, but people might have an issue they want to deal with. And so that's the thing I want us to stay sensitive to, as long as somebody doesn't feel like, well, every time I come, I never get to be the person solving one of my problems. It's interesting. Yeah, go ahead, Rick.
I appreciate that point, Paul, and I think that's something to be sensitive about. And we do the time before we say, okay, who wants to do spotlight next time? And so I didn't feel like it was like 9 hands raising.
Yeah,
that may or may not be reflective of where everybody's at, but one guy's willing to. So but I do think that's helpful, and maybe even just a conversation we can have, like, hey, is this working all right? Do you guys feel like we need to? Do you want to be in the seat more, or do you feel like, to your point, you're learning through other people, because we're all kind of just dealing with the same stuff? So
yeah, absolutely. And this can come back to talking about, I want to talk a little bit about communication between meetings, during the month. My sense is to do what you're doing, choose a person and have them think of a topic and be ready. I love what you said, Rick Boyle, about everybody has the month to think about it. I'm imagining like asking you, do you want to be on the spotlight next month? And if I'm sitting there without some burning issue on my mind, I'm probably going to be like, no, it's okay, I don't need to. But a week and a half later, when the crap hits the fan, then suddenly I'm like, oh man, I really want to talk to the group about this. So I would say, like you said, Rick, let's stay sensitive to the fact that it might come up. And I would even say, let's encourage people. I'm thinking, we'll get into the communication here again because it's important, but I'm thinking we want to be prompting people to be bringing things. But I one of the things we are all in agreement here today on is I don't want people to just show up to the meeting and go, oh, I've got a spotlight topic, right? So even if it's not a whole month to think about it, the way Rick Boyle said, it's if I think of something a week out, then I think it'd be great if I was like, if you guys are my mastermind, which you kind of are, I'd be messaging you in advance saying, hey, here's something that's come up for me. If there's a space for me to do it in a spotlight, I'd like to do it. And that way everybody does have time to think about it before they get there. I mean, even if you have one day to think about something, you're more prepared. Andrew, I think you were.
Yeah, we've had this last time, it was one person as well. And I always feel the hot seat needs to be someone that has a hot topic, right? That needs to get off your shoulders. Because frankly, when I have that, I don't have a month to think about it. I need to make a decision. But I've actually received 2 phone calls from guys in our group that have discussed problems that they're having. And I would hope that everyone else has put themselves out there as well. But it was very positive that those calls came in, because a lot of these guys need that head that's on all of our shoulders here, to see them through some of that. And it was rewarding when the call was over to think about, wow, I'm not the one calling what I would call mentors years ago. You're getting those calls now. So it was very good for both of us to have those discussions, and for that person to get through that challenge without waiting to get to the meeting.
Yeah, if it's a real emergency thing, that's great that you're available, Andrew, to take that call from him, and hopefully other people in your group would be as well. Because what I don't want is for you guys as facilitators to end up being all of these people's personal mentors. That's at least not on an on-call basis. That you have plenty of other things that you need to be doing, for sure.
But anything I can do to help any of the guys, that's minor, really. A 20-minute phone call is really not that big of a change to your life, but it may be to them at that time.
Right, for sure. John, if you can talk, I
Yes.
think you
Yes, sir.
were driving maybe.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep, loud and
All
clear.
right. All right. I apologize for getting on late. I was at a contractor meeting for Jerry and made 3 really nice contacts for conduit. So anyway, on to the mastermind groups. Our group is struggling just to get the rhythm. So what I mean by that is there's 6, 7 guys in that group, and 2 or 3 of them will actually show up on time, and I'll have the rest meander in anywhere from 5, 10 minutes late to one of them right about a half hour late. So, some private phone calls. I reached out to all of them as a group twice this month in a reminder to say, be there on time. The ones that were running exceptionally late, I placed a personal call to just to say, hey, I want to, just encourage us, or anything I can do to help you get there on time. Do you need a reminder the day before? It's a bunch of business people taking time out of their day. Let's all respect each other's time, that kind of thing. So I'm waiting to see how it plays out. The spotlight groups, 2 of them last time went extremely well. The guys were engaged. The topics were good. The business leaders, I think, the owners came out of that with some stuff that they could, a little bit of meat on the bones. They could apply that. Now the challenge is, and it's been talked about, okay, who's next month? Who, part of being part of the group is bringing something to the table. So at this point, another message went out about 5 o'clock this morning to the team to say, hey, who's got an issue? It can't be smooth sailing for everyone all the time. Something's percolating somewhere. Who could bring something to the table? Just let me know. I got messages back that 2 of them won't be there because of vacations, and one of them's not sure with a family issue. I guess there's a serious health issue with someone in a hospice situation. So they may or may not be there. They may be out of town, something like that. So anyway, it's the guys are engaged, but it's just this punctuality thing is driving me freaking crazy, because I don't like to be late. I don't like, we have an agenda, we have a time, we're professionals. Let's act accordingly, So,
Mhm.
so part of it is, I'm going to have to kind of land on it a little bit. I don't want to be the Gestapo, the timekeeper, but hell, somebody has to be. And we're here to elevate the trades. So let's elevate your ability to be punctual.
Mhm.
I guess I'm a stickler on that kind of stuff, maybe to a fault, but
How many people are in your group, John?
there's 7 altogether.
Oh, so if you have 3 people, almost half the group's gone.
Yeah.
3 people late, you got, almost half the group's gone.
Right.
Anybody in this group have any suggestions for John about this conversations about these guys being late? Other than get your ass there on time. That one's been used.
I had one of the guys late, but I made it, actually, it was Tommy. But Tommy had texted like 20 minutes before the meeting time and said, hey, I'm in traffic. Traffic's horrible. And that's understandable, right?
Right, that's gonna happen.
I don't
Yeah.
expect that you sit down the street like I do, but prior to appointments for 15 minutes. But I just made it this super, I think like John's delivery is, we show up on time, and, you don't show up to a client's house late, you don't show up to here late. So I think that's just reiterating and or pulling them aside then and saying, hey, like John said, as business people here, are you wanting to keep this professional, or do you think that you don't see yourself here?
Yeah, that might be a good way. That's a good way to put it. Keep it professional, or maybe you don't see yourself here.
Mhm.
So
You've all probably dealt with employees who show up late. I'm curious if you've engaged anybody in that, in a way that's been effective.
Paul, I
Chase,
don't know if we
yeah.
have if it's in the format of the groups or not, to have like almost ground rules that you just remind people of each group.
Mhm.
That's one way that's an effective strategy for keeping a culture. But then when they don't abide by the ground rules, I think what you're doing, John, that's what I would do, is remind them this is what we agreed to.
It's a volunteer army. It's a volunteer group. You don't have to be there, but if you are, then for God's sake, make the commitment.
Mhm.
Not, half in, half out. Just, in my mind, doesn't get it. So.
Right. Well, and they need to understand that it's not about them. It's about the effectiveness of the group gets better with everybody being there. I wonder if
Right.
you could do a spotlight on this somehow, John.
Put a spotlight on the whole room. I could probably turn that and not make it necessarily attending the mastermind, but what does everyone do with employees that are chronically late? How are you all handling that?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way. That's potentially a good way to go about it. I get a little bit worried about something being passive aggressive. If you say,
I would.
gee, Chase, you've been late 3 times, but I'm not going to say anything about it, but tell me how you deal with a late employee. That feels a little passive aggressive to me.
I get it.
I tend to more think that the way you do anything is the way you do everything. And if they're late for this group, they're probably late for other stuff too. They're probably not.
Right.
I'll never forget the day, I think it was my wife, I was saying to one of my guys who had walked into a house with dirty shoes on and he shouldn't have done it. And I said, come on, man, just treat it like your own house. And then I walked away and she said, you probably should think of another way to say it because he might be treating it like his own house.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, I hadn't thought of that. Maybe his wife has the same conversation with him. So I tend to think that if they're late here, they're probably habitually late other places as well. And I wonder what the cost of that is. Yeah, Chase.
I mean, I think if it's it sounds like your whole group's late, it sounds like for me, it might be time for come to Jesus speech and be like, hey guys, like this isn't playtime here. We're not messing around. This is important shit. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
just kind of, increase the challenge, if you will.
Right.
Yeah, it's
That's a good, that's a good,
disrespectful.
Chase, I appreciate that. That's a good thought, because I might kind of go back to the ground rules and say, are we buying into this? So,
Yeah.
yeah,
A lot of
I
times,
appreciate that.
no problem. A lot of times, like at Friday meetings, like all the chairs usually face me because I'm, want attention. But when we talk about like real deep stuff, like what I'll do is I'll circle the chairs and I'll have everybody sit down and face everybody and be like, okay, guys, pay attention, because there's always guys grab assing and stuff. Sometimes that person is me, but if you kind of stop the presses, and obviously Paul, I would want your blessing on this, but if you stop the presses and say, hey, look, this is has the potential to stop this group from going forward, and there's a lot of people who have invested a lot of time, talent, money, and effort into being here, and say, hey, we need to get past this.
Mhm. Yeah, I definitely think a discussion amongst the group is a good way to handle it. I'm not sure exactly, John, how you would spotlight that. I'll keep thinking about it, but I think there's probably a way to put it on the table for the group to talk about it. Because what I want each member to be is accountable to the group, not to you. I don't want you guys to have to be the taskmasters. I want them to feel a responsibility to their group, not to you as the quote unquote boss, because that's just not the culture you want to have. That's not the position
No,
you want to have in the group.
right. And I'll, in all candor, I'm almost feeling that way. Like I'm having to be the sergeant at arms, and that's not where I want to go.
And I'll say this to you, John. I obviously I wish Jerry was here, but I'll bounce it off of Jerry. But I'm a little more short tempered on this sort of thing than Jerry is. So he may or may not go along with me. But let's keep in mind we're 2 meetings in, right? So we're not meeting every week. It's not like we're 10 meetings in. They've been late to 10 meetings. They've been late to 2. There might be, somebody used the word rhythm. So there might be a rhythm that needs to be gotten to. But I also don't think this is something we need to have a lot of patience with, meaning if you can do if you've done the encouragement you've done, John, you've reached out, you've talked to them, you've had conversations. And if somebody shows up, you get a group of people who are showing up late again in month 3, even after you've made an effort, then I think we need to have a conversation. And maybe it's Conduit need to have a conversation with them about their seriousness of being in the group and remove them, because I don't think people need to be in a group that are going to cause the group to be off balance all the time. It's just, it's, and you get what you tolerate. And so I just don't think that's a good culture in a group like this. So we need to ask them to get, yeah, I think Andrew might have said it in a more blunt way than I'll say it, but it's like, this is a professional group, or maybe it was you, Chase. It's a professional group. People are dedicating time, energy, and their attention to it. They're there to help you. And if you can't reciprocate that, then you're probably in the wrong place. Yeah. So before we get there, let's see how your attempts have worked out, John. Maybe they'll all be punctual this month, and that'll work. I'm going to probably just repeat my experience in month 2, which was actually month 1 for me, because I was going through my dad passing away when month 1 happened. So this was actually my first meeting. But I could tell that there was less bumpiness in it than I would have expected. I could tell it wasn't the first meeting. I have a good group. The preparedness, I love what all of you have shared about being prepared. The one negative I would say is that when it came time for spotlight, nobody in the group really had come with something already on their mind. Now, luckily, somebody jumped in and said, well, I've got this thing. How about we talk about it? And it turned into a really good conversation. But I think it could be a lot more effective if people showed up prepared. So other than that, I would say that I didn't have any tardiness issues. But my group is remote, so you can't get caught in traffic logging into Zoom. Well, John, you did it today somehow.
Yes, I did.
So let's jump to communication between sessions. So I experimented this month with my group is on Thursday. So I just took every Thursday and sent out a email. One of them I sent as a Loom video that I shared a Loom video with all of you. One of my ones to my group was a Loom video. The others were just emails that I just sent to them checking in, encouraging them to check in with each other, encouraging them to be thinking about things. So what I did was the first 2 weeks, I just said, I copied and pasted the accountabilities, the commitments for the month. Now, I don't know if you guys are writing those all down. I chose to jot them down in the meeting. And then I just typed them into a Google Doc, and then I just copy and pasted them into an email and said, here's what we all committed to. If you want to chime in, see how you're doing, that would be great. I got a little bit of response to that. I'd say about half the group responded to that email 2 times, which was good. And then in my last email, I started saying, hey, we're going to be having a meeting here in a couple of weeks. Be thinking about what your spotlight thing could be. What would you like the group to help you do? So that's sort of high level what I put into it. And I'm just throwing that out there to see, have any of you tried anything as far as your communication between like that in your group? And B, can we as facilitators maybe come up with a framework that we'll just try the next month so that we can all be experimenting with the same thing and see what results we get. If we all do the same thing, it'll be easier for us to gauge what's working, what's not. So I'm not saying that like I want to make a rule for all of you to follow. I'm saying let's just decide on something and be consistent about it so we can all determine whether or not it works. Any questions or thoughts? I definitely want your thoughts, but did I say anything that didn't make any sense? I can have a tendency to do that occasionally. Good. So did anybody, some of you, I heard in what you were saying that you've done some communication in between. What's that been like? Or do you have any suggestions for the rest of us?
I would maybe put in, again, something kind of templated would be good. We're all going to spin it in our own direction based on our group and our personalities. But something that kind of helps us along the way, because naturally each and every person on this has got a lot on their plate. Right now I'm 7 days a week stressed to the top. So creating a video is just something that I don't have the ability to do.
No, I certainly wouldn't expect that. But honestly, I do videos sometimes because it's easier for me to stand and talk than it is to sit and type. And I have clients I work with that I do that for them and they like it because it's just easier to digest. I say a lot more in 5 minutes than I type. So, yeah, I thought about a template, Andrew, so I'm glad you said that. So I can work on that. I can work on kind of just it'd be more of an outline than a template, but just something where you can be like, here's the 4 topics or 3 topics or whatever we choose to hit on what could be in that template. Yeah, I'd like to make it as easy as possible on you. It's something we could consider having come from Conduit rather than each of you individually, but I feel like it'll be more personalized if it comes from each of you. But again, I want to make your lives as seamless as possible.
I mean, Paul, John, you got a question?
No, go ahead, Rick. That was me, I think.
I'm just thinking the minimum amount that I feel like I want to communicate is like a reminder, like a week before. Jerry and Ellie sent that out, like, hey, make sure you guys remind your groups. So I think at a minimum, it's a week before the next group. Hey, just a reminder, we're meeting a week from today. And did you check in with your partner on what they committed to doing by this next meeting? So those are 2 things that I thought of that might be helpful to put in there.
So meeting reminder and then asking, did you check in? What do you think about it coming? Anybody else on that topic? Thank you for that, Rick. That's exactly the kind of thing I'm looking for. Just ideas of what you're thinking is going to help you get people there on time, prepared to really truly engage in a good conversation. And at the end of the day, in my mind, get them to be able to actually accomplish what they want to accomplish. If they're going to love this group and show up on time if they find that they're getting things done that they otherwise wouldn't. Yeah, Chase.
So when we do our 1-word opens, Dakota and I usually like take notes, like this person said they were distressed or feeling unfulfilled, you know what I mean? And one of the things that we can kind of key into is saying, hey, just remember last week our brother, you know, Paul was feeling elated because he talked to Chase, you know, just keep him in your mind, you know what I mean? Or, you know, pull something, you know, something from the content of the group that was meaningful, right? Like, hey, we had the spotlight, we really helped, you know, Rick with whatever his problem was. He doesn't have any, look at him, he's handsome, but you know, that kind of thing. Pull something from the meeting that kind of jogs their memory, because everybody's got so many notifications and everything coming at them, you know. Another reminder is, to me, is good. It's a good tool to have something to refer to, but it's not necessarily going to move the mercury, I think, for a lot of people. So shockingly, I try to lead with a joke. So usually I always say, hey, it's your second favorite group facilitator here, blah, 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 blah. So they know, hey, something's coming. So
they know right away it's not Dakota. Anybody else? Thoughts or ideas? Brick, I saw
My
you
connection
go
is
off
better.
mute.
Still lagging.
Yeah, a little bit. Go ahead though.
Okay. I've done something very similar to what you were talking about, and it's kind of evolved even after just the 2 meetings. The first time I found myself just kind of scribbling on the agenda that you gave us as people were introducing their words or their accountability topics for the month. And then I just created just a little spreadsheet for the next meeting where it just had each person and then the categories that as we were going to progress through the meeting, so I could quickly write down what their words were, what their accountability piece was, what there was accountability piece was from last time, and whether or not they actually did anything with it. And that was an interesting kind of go around in our group for the people who are honest to say they either did or didn't, and then what we could do as a group to help facilitate them. And then I just kind of took that, shot it out to everybody, and it engaged the group to kind of respond to each other. So there was kind of some back and forth after I did it, which was nice. So it wasn't so much a reminder, it's more of a recap. And that recap spurned some additional interactions between our group.
Yeah, as you were saying that, Rick, I was thinking that the accountability minute where everybody checks in on like what their accountabilities were and what progress they made right there at the beginning of the meeting. There's probably a lot of rich spotlight topics in that conversation alone right there. You know, no, I didn't do anything. Well, maybe the reason you didn't is what we need a spotlight today. How do we dig into that with you to find out why you didn't, you know? Not in a punitive way, but in a way to just unpack, like, if you're not making progress in something that's important to you, how can the group help you overcome that and make some progress on it? I would be cautious of that too, as people make commitments at the end of your meetings. Make sure they're not too big. You know, we as business owners, we always have a tendency to think we can move heaven and earth in a week. And then we're disappointed. I had a couple guys who worked for me for years that were always like that. If they told me a job would be done in 4 days, I always knew it would be 5 or 6, not because they were lagging, but because they were always optimistic about what they could get done. So kind of keep an eye out for that, because people being continually disappointed in themselves in front of the group because they're never getting the things done that they're committing to do is not a healthy thing for them. And actually, the skill of learning to break things down in more specific ways is a skill that people can learn in this process of, you know, learning to if we think about, I always make the sort of smart ass comment that you can't exercise. It used to piss off one of my employees really bad, but you can't exercise. I would say that, and he would say, yes, you can. And I'd say, then go exercise. And he's like, well, I will. And I said, what are you going to do? And he'd say, well, I'm going to do push-ups. I said, oh, push-ups you can do. Exercise you can't do. And so if you think about it, like, you can't really build a house. You can dig a hole and you can pour a foundation and you can pour a floor and you can, right, step by step by step by step. So we forget to break things down very often into bite-sized pieces that are doable. So just keep an eye out for your group members if they're doing that, and it's worth kind of unpacking with them to see make sure their next step is. One of the biggest causes of procrastination is a freezing about like, what next step do I take? Because there's too many of them in front of me.
Hey, Rick, could you send that sheet out? I'd like to see that.
Share the spreadsheet. Yeah. John, you can't see, but he's nodding and giving you a thumbs up.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
I'm going to jump again real quick because a couple of you actually touched on the one word open, and I had a good conversation with Dakota about this the other day because I was feeling some awkwardness with it. And one of the feedbacks we got from a group member was, why in the world would we do this? It just seems pointless because we just give a word and then we move on, which is kind of the way I was doing it. And it just felt really, to me, doing it that way, felt like this seems like a waste of time because people give a word and then I get really curious about why they use that word, but we weren't pausing on it at all. And Dakota's in a group with Kevin Rains, and Kevin is the one who gifted me the one word open idea, and I do really like it. But what Dakota and I talked about was, and Dakota, if I butcher this up, feel free to hop in and elbow me aside. I think the phrase Dakota used when I was talking with him about this was follow your curiosity. And this is going to require some awareness on your part as facilitators. So if somebody in your group shows up and their one word open is exasperated or unfulfilled, something that is pretty emotionally charged, there's probably something there that they want to talk about, or they probably wouldn't have said the word. They wouldn't have brought it up to the group. So I want to encourage you to follow your curiosity in those situations. When people bring a word up, it's probably worth getting a little bit about what they mean by what's behind that word. I was holding the rule of it being one word a little too tightly. Maybe the rest of you weren't doing this. Maybe it's just me, but somebody was, because the person who said one word seems pointless is not in my group. So somebody else was doing it too. But going around the room, getting a word, and then you don't have to stop on everybody, but things that seem especially charged or things that bring up some curiosity in you are probably worth saying, that sounds like a lot. Would you like to share a little more about that, or tell us more about why you're feeling that way? To give people an opportunity to bring things out. And, keeping in mind, you're all business owners, some of you have partners, some of you do not. And you know how lonely it can sometimes be to be the business owner, and there's nobody who actually gets you. There's nobody who understands the things that you go through. I always say that if someone hasn't had to make payroll, there's a big chunk of their life of anxiety they've never had to deal with. So it's, and you guys are all in that unique world, and all of your group members are too. So they're in that same unique world too. So I'd love your feedback or thoughts or questions about that. Rick Boyle.
I'm actually really glad to hear you say this, because after 2 weeks, I felt like we were missing opportunities there just to engage more. That is probably the one part of our meeting that I think people actually enjoy and put a lot of thought into. And there have been some very insightful words that have been thrown out that I wanted to revisit. And we always said at the end of the meeting, if we have time, I'd like to circle back and understand what you're saying a little bit more. But trying to keep to the script more than I probably should have. We never really had the time to do that yet. So I think we are going to pivot on that. And when it makes sense, or there's a word that just requires or warrants a little deeper dive, we're going to take advantage of that in some way.
Yeah. So I wasn't the only one. I knew somebody else
Not
was
at all.
screwing it up like I was. There's, yeah, I agree with you, Rick. And I think what I would encourage you to do then is just, and I'm going to do this next week as well in my group. When there's one or two things that people bring out that that are insightful, that you have some curiosity about it, trust the curiosity and follow it a little bit. The thing I'll and remind you of, and I probably don't even have to, because you do this all the time in your meetings every day, is just be mindful of your timing. And if there is a really deep topic that comes up, somebody really is having some pain, then you could offer yourself, or you could say, hey, that sounds like a lot. Would somebody be willing to follow up with them and help out? So that way it doesn't just get like oh, we uncovered something serious but wait, I got to move on. Try to open the door to there being some contact later. You know, if I've got some issue that we discuss here a little bit and we start getting short on time, it would still feel really good if, you know, Andrew said, hey, why don't we're going to run out of time, but why don't we grab a coffee later and talk about that? You know, that it gives an opportunity for that opening. Any other thoughts? Anybody else? Some of you probably were not adhering to it as strictly as Rick and I were. If you want to share your experiences that were probably more productive than mine, I would love to hear it.
I was adhering to that pretty strictly, and I completely agree with Rick. There were some words put out that you thought, wow, you know, and I think the way I set it all up initially was this one word idea is just how you're feeling. Be open, be candid, and you won't be challenged or cross-examined. Just put it out there. So having put those qualifiers, no challenge, no cross-examination, I, you know, maybe unwillingly slammed the door on exploring those things. So I'm gonna go back and revisit that because I like that. Follow the curiosity. That's excellent.
Yeah, I think I probably slammed the door on it when I set the agenda up, John, and you were just kind of doing the way it was couched, but I appreciate you sharing the burden with me. It's yeah, and what I would say is, and I'll do this myself in my group, is if you were adhering to it tightly like I was, and you're going to change that, tell them before you do it, especially John, if you've told them you won't be challenged or cross-examined, because it may suddenly feel like a challenge or a cross-examine. But you know, just let them know it's not, we don't want to challenge you, but we do want to be curious about what's going on with you, because I've heard some words that have been pretty heavy words, you know, but if somebody comes to a meeting and they're like, how do you feel personally? Defeated. Whoa, feels like there's something in that.
Yeah.
Do you want to say more about feeling defeated? And give them the opportunity to say no. You know, we don't want them cross-examined, but give them the opportunity to say no. But keep in mind, as you know, as guys, we think we're rough and tough and we can handle anything. But the truth is, this group may be the only group that as they get more and more comfortable, this may be the only place they can actually admit some of the insecurities and anxieties they have, that we all have. We just don't always share them with everybody. Yeah, Chase.
One of the things that people have told my brother and I repeatedly, because we run the business together, is you're so lucky to have your brother. And I'm like, you've never met my brother. No, I'm kidding. But is like, because you're able to bounce ideas off of each other and like really talk about, and not just like, if I'm going through deep personal shit, you know, I can talk to him about it and vice versa. And to talk to someone who actually knows what you're talking about as a business owner, it's, you know what I mean? And I think you guys are really onto something, man. If you lean into that, you know, one word open. If somebody says heartbroken, like, I gotta talk to that guy. This sounds like someone who might have more to share other than somebody's like, I'm good. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And what Chase just said might be if you've been adhering to it tightly like I have, what Chase just said might be a great way to say, hey, I'm going to change my approach to this, and here's why. You can even just blame the rest of us in this group and say, as a group of facilitators, we talked about it and we think there's more value to be had in doing it this way, so we're going to shift it and do it that way. Because I'm feeling an awful lot of agreement in digging deeper in these things.
I think Rick's idea, and Tommy has been writing it down in his little notebook. Who knows where that actually goes? But I think putting it on a spreadsheet and going back and telling people we're not using the same word again, because you're going to always have the guys that say okay or fantastic every month, fantastic. Well, we know that's the front, right? But I think that's good. Oddly enough, I'm a numbers guy, right? So I would love to go back at the end of the year and look at all 12 of those sheets and see if there's trends there between everybody.
Interesting. Andrew, I'm not doing that, but you're free to do it if you want.
Yeah, I will.
No, it's great. I'm Somebody was talking about moving files around and renaming them on their computer and spending like hours and hours doing it. And I'm like, man, I'd rather jam an ice pick in my ear than do that. That is not my thing.
I bet you would see a cyclical cycle through each of the quarters of the year, especially when you look at multi-year snapshots of that.
Yeah, it's probably true. Yeah. But the other, and not but, and the other thing about being curious about things is that, Andrew, if you do get that person who's mailing it in just by saying fantastic every week, you could, it's always a fun thing I do when I'm coaching newer people, and they say something like fantastic, then I'll go, what makes it fantastic? And now they've got to go under it and give you something that actually makes it fantastic.
It's just not a response.
Exactly. Try it sometime when you meet somebody and you say, how you doing? And they say, I'm doing great. And you say, oh, why are you doing great? And, they'll be like, well, and they have to think about it. And thinking about it is a good thing because they might be great, but you feel more great when you actually understand why you feel great. So it's, it'll be things that'll keep people from, if they know that you're more interested in something deeper, they'll hopefully invest in saying something a little deeper. I mean, somebody could be fantastic, but you're right. If they say that every week, it's probably not true. It's probably a response. Okay. Rick Meyer, were you doing the one word thing perfectly? We were all screwing it up.
Yep, perfectly.
Awesome.
No, we adhered to it also. So, yeah, I do like the idea of potentially pausing, like, oh, maybe tell us more about that if you want to. So I think that would maybe take some things next level for the group, and also maybe, especially on the professional side, maybe help illuminate some possible spotlight ideas. So
Exactly. Yeah, I love that. That's true. Because if somebody says stuck and you say, what do you mean by stuck? Well, I'm trying to do X, Y, and Z and I haven't been able to do it. Oh, would you like to make that a spotlight topic today if we have time? Sure, that'd be
yeah,
great.
or overwhelmed or
Right.
frustrated, or all those.
Yep. Dakota, I'm gonna go to you last just to find out, did we cover this pretty well? You have more experience with this with Kevin than any of us do. So just curious if anything else you'd add.
I think you covered it really well, Paul. One addition I would make is sometimes you may spend half an hour to 40 minutes or more on these one word opens. Like, that can happen, not that it should happen, but just to give you allowance if the group is really processing something in the moment, you don't want to move on from that. But if you're getting through them comfortably and there's no reason to hold up the group. So it's one of those things that's hard to tell you exactly what to do, but just be aware that if you do spend over a half hour on one word opens because the group needs that time for that issue, that's okay. And you may have to sacrifice something else in the format. And you just get better and better at noticing that the more reps you get.
Yeah, I could see if somebody's having a particularly difficult thing going on, that it could use up more of your time. Yeah. It's always that balance between sticking to the timing of the agenda and caring about the person in the moment. So you're all caring human beings, and you'll understand when the moment requires what Dakota's talking about. And just imagine how committed that group member becomes to the group if you're able to do that for them. And hey, everybody has a rough patch, so you never know when it's going to come up. For sure. Good. Well, we have raced through either intentionally or by touch. I had commitment tracking. was on my list as well. Does anybody have any? I don't have anything to say about it. I've been jotting them down myself and then putting them in a doc, like I said, so that I would have them in the emails I'm sending out. But does anybody have any tricks or suggestions or anything else unique you're doing to track commitments?
That's what we're doing, Paul.
Okay. Rick Boyle, I think you were going to jump in.
I was going to say it wasn't necessarily the intent behind it, but the spreadsheet that I've created documents it. It's measured, which gets measured. And when they see it on there, and I'm constantly either checking, yes, it got worked on, or no, it did not get worked on, it gives some incentive for the accountability side.
I like that. I'm going to second what John said, if you don't mind sharing that. And if you want to share it with me, Rick, I'll make sure it gets sent out to all the facilitators if you don't have everybody in one place in an email group, because I do. So I'm happy to share it out there.
And I'll forewarn you, it's nothing special. It's nothing fancy. It's just a little spreadsheet that just kind of calls out the topics, and there's a worked on it, didn't work on it. So I'd be happy to share it.
It's more special and fancy than my handwritten note.
Nobody could read my writing. I didn't have a choice.
None of us are special and fancy either, Rick, so we're good. Okay, I had topics discussed. I think we hit on that. I had communication between sessions, one word update, commitment tracking, timing. Well, it sounds like you're all working within the agenda. The agenda wasn't meant to be a hard rule to follow, but as long as it's giving you a structure and something to kind of give your meeting a path to follow, it seems like that's working reasonably well. Always feel free to say, let's update the agenda, let's change this, let's take that out, let's put this in. I'm always listening for that as we're talking in these meetings, but for sure, it's see it as something. I want the meetings, one of the big reasons for me for there to be an agenda is a conduit mastermind should be a conduit mastermind, meaning it should be like if I go to a Meyer Brothers construction site, I should know what to expect. Like the clients should know what the treatment's going to be because every client is treated in a very similar, consistent way. So that's the same thing. And I know each of you in your businesses strive for that. So because it's part of your brand, it's part of your reputation. And my goal for these with Conduit is that the experience in a Conduit mastermind is relatively consistent. They don't have to be identical because I'm sure if I go, Rick Boyle on one of your jobs and you have one project manager on this one and one on this one, even though the client's getting an almost identical experience, it's going to be slightly different based on the personality of the person who's there. So I'm not looking for these to be like robotic, but just looking for us to hold some kind of consistency so people know what to expect going from one to the other. Anybody else have a topic? I am happy to let you go early today.
I do have a question that's outside of this.
Yeah.
When Jerry sent out the calendar stuff, that list, he had on there for the Conduit quarterly social event, which is October 2nd, 4 to 6 p.m. Is there anything that we're needing to know about that?
Only where it is, I would imagine. You won't be asked to do anything at that. It truly
No,
is
I
just
meant
a
to
social.
tell our groups about it because
Oh.
I haven't seen any invites or what it is or where it's at or anything.
That's a great question. Let me, Kelly was working on that. Let me ask Kelly about that. I seem to think there's a place selected for that. So yeah,
That's
we should
fine.
get something
I
out
have
to
a book holder in my calendar, but that's not saying everyone else does. So I would just want to make sure that everyone in our group is there.
Thank you for bringing that up, Andrew. I wasn't aware of it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And that brought up actually something, reminded me of something else, and now it left. Popped in and right back out again. Could you repeat exactly what you just said, Andrew, word for word? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, it's on the recording.
Oh, I remember what it was. You said speaker series, and it reminded me of integrating the speaker series into the mastermind groups. I know more than one of you told me that you did that. Any questions or thoughts about I think you were all at the speaker series that Chase did. I think I remember seeing all of you there. Any questions since we have Chase about how we might engage people, or questions we might ask people about
Can
that
we-
topic in the next group?
Can we get the screenshot of the chart? Because naturally, Chase, it was a great talk. There's so much there that can be unpacked. But I think if we had kind of that screenshot, I'm gonna put that into my meeting agenda notes, to be able to frankly put out on the table so that it's acknowledged, people see it, even for the guys that aren't there for that discussion period of the meeting, that everyone gets the opportunity to partake, because it was great.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great idea, Andrew. And Chase, if you don't mind, if you want to send it to me, I have a group email that goes to all the facilitators. If you have it, that's great. Send it to everybody. If
There's
you
a
wanna make
Google
it
Drive
easy.
too.
Oh yeah, that's right. You can drop it in the facilitator's Google Drive. That'd be even better. And Rick, if you want to do that with the spreadsheet, just drop it in the facilitator's Google Drive. That's even better. Thank you, Andrew. I'd forgotten about that.
Thanks for the kind words, Mr. Glasgow. Yeah, I can hook that up. I'll drop it in there today.
Yeah, I
Your shirt
enjoyed your
looks
talk
good
a
too,
lot.
Chase.
Yeah.
Your shirt looks good too, Chase.
I enjoyed the talk a lot too. It's one of those topics that's like, you can talk about it for an hour, but you could actually talk about it for a week if you open it up and really start digging into the reality of it.
Yep.
That's a good book. I enjoyed that book. All right. Thanks, Andrew. Anything else? Anybody have anything else? Rick Boyle?
And this slow connection has limited my interaction today, so I feel kind of bad about that. But just to circle way back to John's topic about just his group and their participation. We sat down in our very first meeting just with the mindset that we're all going to get out of this as much as we put into it. And we just had a meeting. We're a bunch of business owners, professionals. I don't want to have to establish a bunch of rules, but there are certain expectations. And we narrowed it down to just be prompt, be prepared, and be present. And if we all do that, we're going to get a lot out of this. And so far, it's worked out really well.
The 3 Ps.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Thank you.
Now, John, you can blame Rick Boyle. You can go to your group and say, you're supposed to be prompt, prepared, and present. Rick Boyle said, and he's a big guy. If you don't do it, I'm sicking him on you.
He'll be here to give you an attitude correction.
I have zero tolerance for tardiness. So,
Oh, I love it. I love it. You're so, we're
I
singing
think-
from the same hymnal there, buddy.
Yeah, I think we all grew up in the same house for sure.
Yeah.
I always joke, I show up 5 minutes early and I'm the late brother. When
Yeah.
I meet my brothers somewhere, they're always there waiting on me. Like, where you been? I'm like, well, I'm 5 minutes early. What are you talking about?
Yep.
gentlemen, appreciate it all. Have a great weekend.
All right. Thanks,
You
everybody.
too. Take care. Bye.
See you.
Thanks.
Thanks.